today. He wanted me to send you greetings and love. He will be here in a little while. But today we have a very special treat. We have Ryan Karp from Chosen People Ministries. Some of you know that Neil and I are also on staff with Chosen People. So we've known Ryan for years, since he was a teenager. And it is a blessing to have him come and speak with us today. That's a picture of him and his wife, Jessa. They are going to have their baby. When's their due date, Ryan? The 9th. His wife is due to have a baby on the 9th. So it's their first child, and we're excited about that. But more than that, I'm going to let him explain a little bit what he's doing in the area for Chosen People Ministries. He recently moved back to the Washington, D.C. area from New York. And him and his wife are doing ministry in the Washington, D.C. area with college campuses, but I'll let him expound on that. So let's welcome him.
It's okay, I have until like 1 o'clock. Nobody heard that? That was a joke. Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Oh, very nice. Do I have a timer here? Is this Neil's? Excuse me. Okay. Well, thank you for having me back again. For those of you who recognize me, hello. And for some of my friends, hello. And for those who don't recognize me, also hello. My name is Ryan Karp, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself first, and then I'm going to get into the message today, which I'm going to call, am I a steward or am I a squanderer? I like the word squanderer. It sounds somewhat biblical, but somewhat sinister. You know, am I a steward or am I a squanderer? So just to briefly tell you, my wife and I are doing ministry to college students, which may sound nothing special to you, but in fact, in reality, is revolutionary for the Jewish world, because almost nobody outside of Israel does college ministry to Jewish kids. And if you were to ask Campus Crusade or InterVarsity or RUF or Baptist Collegiate Ministries, how often do you do outreach to the 20% of your population that is Jewish? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The University of Maryland, for example, is 20% Jewish. 1 out of every 5 people you meet will be Jewish. And when they realize that, because of course they've never studied that before, but when they realize it, they say, oh, we almost never have Jewish people come across our paths. They never enter our meetings. Maybe like 1 in every couple years. And I say, well, doesn't your mission statement say that you're supposed to reach the whole campus with the gospel of the Messiah? And they say, yes. And I say, you're missing 20%. That's a significant portion. And they say, yes, please come help us. And so we are doing that. And honestly, there are about 2 other people that are doing college ministry, but they're not doing it in the way that we're doing it. They're simply sort of standing on the corners and handing out books or tracts or something. And that's kind of not what we want to do. We want to establish a full-time presence at these campuses. But you can pray for us, because after 1.5 years of this, I've discovered it's really difficult. Because if you're InterVarsity or Campus Crusade and you want to go into a campus and start a Christian group, relatively easy. You just find the Christians, you say, we want to start a contemporary Christian group, and they say, okay, here's my email address and let's start a group. But if I want to find Jewish people who believe in Yeshua, not so many. If I want to find Christians who love the Jewish people or love Israel and want to be a part of that group, at least at a college level, there's not so many. So I'm finding the niche of a niche, or the niche of a niche, okay? It's not easy, and so I'm doing this 1 by 1 right now. Now, at the University of Maryland, we have a lot of favor, which kind of builds into my message today, with the Christian groups. And so it's my job to take advantage of that favor as much as possible. I don't mean take advantage in a selfish way. I mean to really use it for God's kingdom. On the other hand, at American University, I have so little favor, it's ridiculous, where the Christian group there does not want me there. Perhaps because they're nervous, or perhaps because they're territorial. My goal is not to steal anybody, you know? I don't want to steal anybody, and I don't want to minister to just people who already believe in Yeshua. But this guy, for some reason, doesn't want me there, which means that I have to figure out another way. Believe it or not, I have to figure out another way, and at American University, you're looking at 24% Jewish. Okay? At George Washington University, 27%. 27% is one of the highest percentages in the nation, okay? I think there's only two higher. One is Columbia, and the other one is, I want to say Brooklyn College, okay? And they're at 28%. So this is a tremendous need. So at the University of Maryland, there's between 700 and 7,500 Jewish students who are not hearing the gospel, but should be. So that's what we're doing. You can pray to perhaps even help us with an outreach that we are doing. We are bringing in a documentary filmmaker who made a movie called Promised Land about surfing in Israel. I realize Israel surfing, if you're a real surfer, you may not understand that concept. There's all sorts of jellyfish in the Mediterranean. But believe it or not, this guy has a ministry to surfers, and he loves Israel, and he loves the Lord. And so he went to Israel. He interviewed Jewish people, Israelis. He interviewed Arabs, and he interviewed Jewish believers as well, even in America. And the movie is amazing. It will gather a unique group of college students. So we have to fly him out, give him an honorarium, because this is his work, as he's going to Talbot, actually, which is where Neil is also attending. And he's going to be doing that at the University of Maryland, and we're looking for a second university. So if you have any connections to George Washington, American, Towson, something like that, all right, we'll talk later. I need to know, because I need to get bang for my buck, so to speak. And this is my job. I'm actually writing things that will help people across the nation within Chosen People Ministries plant other works, because I'm the only one doing it. So that's a little bit of what I'm doing. It's incredibly difficult, it's incredibly satisfying, and it's incredibly frustrating all at the same time. You know, I didn't get into this ministry for the numbers or for the money, so I'm doing it because God said to do it, all right? And I love my people. So that being said, let's get into today's message, which I'm going to call, Am I a Steward or Am I a Squanderer? My job within Chosen People is to take advantage as much as I can of the favor that I'm given with Christian people. Whether that means to raise support or partnership, financial partnership, whether that means to actually do the physical ministry with them, that's my job. And if I don't do that well, and by the way, there are lots of times when I have not done that well, and I was super convicted as I was preparing this message, which is not very fun at all, to be super convicted, you know? Guys, I need some feedback here. Some smiles would be good. All right, you're smiling at me, good. Okay. If I don't do a good job, then my ministry, God's kingdom, is not impacted, at least in my little sphere of influence. So I have to take advantage of as much favor. I don't want to squander that. I remember when I was little, and I learned the word sass. Okay, who has little kids? Who has sassy little kids? Who has had sassy little kids? Okay, so I remember I learned the word sass. Why? Because I was a sassy kid, okay? And I gave my mother hell. She dealt with, I was an only child for almost 9 years, and she dealt with the back talker of back talkers. I was a smart kid, and I used that, I thought, to my advantage. And sometimes, at least I thought, I wore my mother out, okay? Because I would sass her so much. And she would warn me, okay? She would say, wait till your dad gets home. Wait till your dad gets home. And sometimes I'd test her. And it turns out, I didn't wear her out. My mom was just having favor on me. She was having grace with me. The only problem with that was, I didn't learn from that moment of favor or that moment of grace. I squandered it. I didn't recognize it as favor or grace. I recognized it as a victory. I didn't win, but my 7-year-old or 6-year-old or 8-year-old self, I thought I won. So what happened the next time that I sassed or backtalked? Sometimes my mom would have grace on me. Sometimes she wouldn't. And I'm about to have a son. And I thought, when you have a kid, you got to be, kind of tough love and lay down the law. And then I saw someone with their newborn and their kid, and I saw another friend with their 3-year-old, and their 3-year-old did something wrong. And I could see the tension in the parents' eyes as they wanted and needed to discipline their kid, but as their kid's little bottom lip started quivering, it's like, I don't want to hurt you, or I don't want to discipline you. But we need that sometimes, and yet sometimes we get grace and favor, and my mom was like that. Sometimes she just didn't want to take away privileges. She didn't want to ground me. She didn't want to have to tell my dad that I was being a disrespectful little kid. And so I thought I won, and the next time when I sassed again, because I didn't learn the first time, and I didn't win, I got my privileges taken away. And it was painful because I thought, wait a second, I won last time, how come I didn't win this time? So this morning we're going to talk about what you do and what I do and what we should be doing and what we may not be doing with the favor and the grace extended to us by God and by others. So turn with me, please, to Genesis chapter 9. I need to hear pages flipping. Don't just rely on that up there if there are some verses up there. And now, we're not going to talk about what we typically understand as grace. Okay, a lot of times grace is defined as unmerited favor by the Lord. Okay? I'm going to back up a little bit from that definition, and I'm just going to call it favor. Okay? So I might use grace and favor interchangeably this morning. So just be aware of that. I'm not necessarily talking about unmerited favor, although sometimes I will be. Sometimes I might just be talking about favor. Okay? When God or a person shows you a little bit of extra. So that's what I want to kind of preface this with this morning. So if you can, try to backtrack in your minds from what you would traditionally understand as grace or favor. Now, I find it interesting that I'm given the parashah. Actually, last week, the parashah actually had the first mention of grace in it. The first mention of grace. Look in Genesis chapter 9, chapter 6, verse 8. Now, depending on your translation, it's going to say a couple different things. It's going to say, but Noah found what? Grace. Does anybody have a different definition? Favor. All right, so you're kind of getting why I say grace or favor here, right? Now, the funny thing is, this word in Hebrew is not the word that we would traditionally translate as grace, although in the King James Version, it's translated as grace about half the time in the Old Testament. Okay? Also, in the JPS, the Jewish Publication Society, it's translated as grace. But this is, the word that we would normally translate as grace is chesed. Chesed, okay? But this word is not chesed, it's chen. Chen, which, when you look it up, it says grace or favor or whatever. So we're just looking at this idea of grace and favor this morning. But it's not just the idea of